God of blessing and warning, disturbing the deadly order of the world, give us faith tested in poverty, hunger for what really satisfies, eyes softened by tears, and hearts ready to laugh at all that is false and pompous, that we might be witnesses to the dignity of life through Jesus Christ, who turns the world upside down. Amen. Let us hear the words from the prophets. We'll have Micah chapter 6, verses 1 through 8.
Hear now what Yahweh says. Come, plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Listen to Yahweh's indictment, you mountains, and your enduring foundations of the earth, where Yahweh has a dispute with the people and is putting Israel on trial. O my people, what have I done to you? How have I wearied you? Give me an answer. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery. I sent Moses to lead you, and Aaron and Miriam. My people called to mind the plans devised by the rule of Balak of Moab, and how Balaam ben Er answered him, remember the journey for Shittim and Gilgal, and recall how Yahweh brought you justice. What shall I bring when I come before Yahweh and bow down before God on high, you ask? Am I to come before God with burnt offerings, with year-old calves? Will Yahweh be placated by thousands of rams or 10,000 rivers of oil? Should I offer my firstborn for my wrongdoings, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? Listen here, mortal. God has already made abundantly clear what good is and what Yahweh needs from you. Simply do justice, love kindness, and humbly walk with your God.
It probably needn't be said that Lois was a big fan of St. Francis. And so we're going to read his prayer. Would you bow your heads with me? Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is offense, let me bring pardon. Where there is discord, let me bring union. Where there is error, let me bring truth. Where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is despair, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, let me bring your light. Where there is sadness, let me bring joy. O Master, let me not seek as much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that one receives. It is in self-forgetting that one finds. It is in pardoning that one is pardoned. It is in dying that one is raised to eternal life. Amen. And now we have our gospel lesson from Jesus' inaugural address.
Luke chapter 4, 14 to 21. Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee, and his reputation spread throughout the region. He was teaching in the Galilean synagogues, and all were loud in their praise. Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. Entering the synagogue on the Sabbath, as was his habit, he stood up to do the reading. When the book of the prophet Isaiah was handed him, he unrolled the scroll and found the passage where it was written, "The Spirit of our God is upon me, because the Most High has anointed me to bring good news to those who are poor. God has sent me to proclaim liberty to those held captive, recovery of sight to those who are blind, and release to those who are in prison, to proclaim the year of our God's favor." Rolling up the scroll, Jesus gave it back to the attendant and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed upon him, and then he said to them, "Today, in your hearing, this scripture passage is fulfilled."
Many of you know that my mother was pastor here from 1980 to 1985. And if you think about what our country was going through in those years, and what people like my folks and Lois were up to, when you think about those demonstrations against the inordinate amounts of money that we spent then and continue to spend on the arms race, on covert wars in Latin America, there was no shortage of places to go or causes to support. And my parents and Lois and a good number of others were always a part of carpooling to some protest or conference or lecture, and Lois was a deep part of my memory growing up here from age 10 to 15 in this congregation. So returning to now become, pastor at Prince of Peace, it's been really special. And to be able to redevelop that relationship that I had as a young person with Lois, with all the years that had gone by, and yet so many things that we had done together. I was looking forward to doing many more things with Lois, and our pandemic and Lois' health got in the way. Nevertheless, Lois made a deep impression on me as a youngster. And in the last few months of visiting Lois, as it became clear that her days with us were numbered, I took every opportunity I could to share my appreciation with Lois. And, if Lois were here right now, she'd be pretty uncomfortable with the fuss that we're making over her, She was uncomfortable with the fusses that people would make over her, and she had her moments in the spotlight for sure, more than many or even most of us get. But that's not what she was after. It made her deeply uncomfortable. Not standing up for the voiceless, but being applauded for it. That's what made her uncomfortable. And so I would have to take some time to explain to her that my words of appreciation were not trying to put her up on some pedestal or make her feel better about herself even, but to let her know the way I saw love at work in her, in our world through her. That's really what it's about. And that's why we're here. Because Lois was just trying to make a difference. And she knew that sometimes that meant being a voice for those who weren't heard. Sometimes it meant standing up in being the loudest voice in the room. Now, Lois took Micah chapter 6 to heart. What does God require? As a preacher's kid, right? I was a preacher's kid. Lois was a preacher's kid. We got a few preacher's kids out there, so I know that you know some of the territory, some of the expectation that can come with that. And Lois was the oldest of, 10, right? And so if you think about the kind of expectation that can come upon the oldest of 10 siblings and the responsibilities that you have, especially on top of that, being a pastor's kid, when the pastor and pastor's wife are often called away at the same time, Lois was the one who was called on to take care of others. And it came with a lot of burden at times. And she got some of that in Sunday school. You know, Andy and Terry Murray wrote that great song about I learned it in Sunday school. Well, I often wonder how Lois heard that song, because when she thought of all the things that she learned in Sunday school, I know at the top of that probably was that good, better, best, right? Never let it rest, and all the rest. Anyway, that good, better, best, she got weary of it. It shaped the way she looked at the world, right? And she always gave it her best, but she wearied of it. And she grew up so far ahead of her time, I think, in her understanding of the double standard of the way women were treated, especially when we think about, you know, I think her father had expected every one of their children, every one of his children, to either become a preacher or a preacher's wife. Right? So right there, I think if Lois was born any time in the last, 20 years, Lois would have been a preacher herself, I suspect. But there was a double standard. And she took Micah 6 to heart. What does God require of us, right? It's not the stars that she would earn on the Sunday school room wall for memorizing scripture, right, or showing up in class. She knew, because she read her Bible, she knew that God required of us justice and compassion and humility. And she pursued those things. And she persisted. Lois took Luke 4 to heart, Isaiah 58 and 61 to heart, Jesus' inaugural sermon to heart. The Spirit of the Lord has anointed me, because God has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives, to bring recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of Jubilee. She understood what that meant. Just as that was Jesus' purpose, that was to be the purpose of everyone who had decided to follow Jesus. Lois walked the talk. She practiced what she preached. And she did it with joy. There are lots of people that walk the talk, and it doesn't look like that much fun. But Lois knew how to have fun. She knew how to let her hair down. She knew how to move back there in the pews, She didn't deprive herself of beauty or pleasure. She tried to share these too. She gave it all that she could. In the end, she has had to leave some of us some work to do still. When I would ask her in the last few months if she had any unfinished business, she would look at me like, seriously? Are you serious? Like, can we start with Joe Manchin? She would say, how could he? I was born in West Virginia too. We looked on her phone. She had called his office many times and left detailed messages about what people who were born in West Virginia should know about taking care of your neighbors and looking after the down and out, right? So she knew she had unfinished business. As surely as we see trouble in the world, she knew there was still work to do. So we, I think, need to say, well done, good and faithful servant. You've done far more than any of us could be expected to, but you've still left us some good jobs. You've still left us the good work. And you're also leaving us beauty and joy and inspiration. and strength, right? Real strength and courage and grit and humility and grace. In the end, Lois' mind was failing some, and she wasn't her normal self. She wasn't always her best self. And so we need to grant her that understanding. Even as we know that made it tough for some of us. It made it tough for some of the people that helped to take care of her. But we celebrate that who she was at her heart was filled with love and grace and truth. And it lives still. Thanks be to God. Friends, our photo tribute, it will be accompanied by music which Megan has played on her harp and recorded for us, and also a mutual kumquat song with Seth Hendricks singing For the Beauty of the Earth. And almost all of the pictures are ones that Lois's family took. There are a few from folks here at church and a few from the newspaper. So I invite you to, let's turn off the lights so that we can watch the photo tribute.
For the beauty of the earth, for the glory of the skies, for the love which from Harper over and around us lie. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the beauty of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Thank you for coming together today to celebrate the life of Lois Treasure Whitacre Clark. There are so many memories to share. Mom and our late father, Bob Clark, taught the value of lifelong learning. Mom took us to the South Bend Public Library as kids. For many of my childhood years, every week I checked out 10 books. Our home was filled with books. My home is filled with books. My brothers and I read different books, but all of us are avid readers. Throughout the decades, Mom often would be the first person to check out a new book from the library. She usually had a stack of library books at any one time, but she seldom actually read whole books. She told me she always started reading at the end of a book. She gleaned what she needed in the last chapter and moved on to the next book. I think the Bible was an exception to her usual practice, as she quoted more from the Gospels than from Revelation. The oldest child of 10, many of Mom's values came down the line from her parents, Bertha and Joseph Whitacre, and countless ancestors. Each new generation takes on some of what their parents modeled and takes a pass on some things. My two brothers would agree with me that we are glad that our mom took a pass on having 10 children. Mom taught the value of making a difference. Margaret Mead's quote comes to mind. Quote, "Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed, that's all who ever have." End of quote. Who knows whatever happened to the letter Mom sent to Nikita Khrushchev? It is possible that the U.S. Post Office never allowed it to leave the country. Mom was a frequent letter writer to the South Bend Tribune's Voice of the People column. She was on a first-name basis with her senators and Congress representatives, frequently calling their offices, writing them letters, and witnessing for peaceful expenditures of tax dollars whenever she met with them, sometimes in their local South Bend office and sometimes in Washington, D.C. The number of peace posters and signs that Mom created is remarkable. There's one notion to capture our mother's peace in the world actions over her 99 years. It is Henry David Thoreau's words, offered gender-free. Quote, "If a person does not keep pace with their companions, perhaps it is because they hear a different drummer. Let each step the music which they hear, however measured or far away." End of quote. Mom's different drumming inspired many every day, making a difference in small steps. Her present moment living is an example of how to make our world a better place. Today, we honor Mom's value for equality, where every human being can thrive. Mom worked tirelessly on her many projects, mainly world peace for the coming generations of children. In the words of poet Naomi Shihab Nye, quote, "The real heroes of race and culture would always be the people who stepped out of their own line to make a larger circle." End of quote. Mom always lived her life with the larger circle in her mind's eye. Where did her inspiration come from? Here's one possibility she recalled from when she was 12. Mom was confined to bed rest for an entire year due to appendicitis and rheumatic fever. She overheard a physician telling her parents, "I'm afraid there isn't anything we can do for the little lady upstairs." However, this physician did not know our mother. Remember, our mother's middle name is treasure. Without school that year, Lois Treasure wandered into her minister father's library and took a slim volume off the shelves. Intrigued with that book, Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell, founder of Temple University, Mom remembered the kernels of truth in that allegory over 80 years later. The moral of the story is that treasure is found in your own home territory. Mom found four-leaf clovers in her backyard. Who else does that? Do any of you seek the near impossible? As many of you know, Mom was a keen observer of all of nature. Not only did she collect four-leaf clovers, Mom collected fall leaves. We found them pressed in books all over her homes. She took many photographs of trees in every season, Head Start children, busy as bees, snowstorms, clouds, sunsets, grandchildren's and great-grandchildren's antics, peace marches. Well, she kept Kodak in business for years, for decades. And then she kept cell phone employees busy with many repairs to her several cell phones when she could not take more pictures. She took so many cell phone pictures that she kept saying, I should delete some of these, but she was always too busy to delete anything. Mom was a collector of quotes, newspaper articles, church bulletins, especially if they had my father's juicy sermon critiques, and tape cassettes from lectures she attended. When cleaning out her assisted living home, I found the beads from a broken bracelet in many different places. The beads are all tiny globes of the world. This was so characteristic of Mom. Here a world thought, there a world thought. There are so many possibilities in life, and our creative mother kept her ideas flowing for new Head Start displays, new peace banners, and gun violence awareness posters for the Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebrations. She added her pressed leaves to some of these creations. She often added leaves to her homemade greeting cards. Her cards included a poem that she wrote for every occasion. Here are a few lines from one of our mother's Christmas poems. Quote, the spirit of love, which from the first dawn gave life its meaning and spurs us all on. The challenge through ages has always been for love to be heard through noise and din. It's not up to us to make it succeed. We need only be faithful in planting the seed. End of quote. Our mom was a seed planter of love and peace. Her enduring symbol was the butterfly. She collected butterfly pictures. She wore butterfly earrings. In ancient Greek, the word for butterfly is psyche, which means soul. But about a year ago, I asked Mom what the butterfly really meant to her. She needed to think about it. She said, I'll send you an email. Here are her words in an email. I think you will actually find she described herself. Quote, some words that come, unexpected, momentary brush with beauty, desire to see where it will light again, heartwarming, sheer fragile strength, unbelievable endurance, ability, capable, bonding influence, affection, attraction, attention, amazing, spelled with 5 A's, gossamer winged, flitting, more flutterby words. How about mesmerizing, spelled M-E-S-S, merizing, fleeting, momentous. End of quote. One more family tidbit to share. This time it is Mom's request. I found this slip of paper dated June 5th, 2018 among her treasured stuff. Quote, "Things I want everyone to know during the time at my memorial. If I had not had the kind of loving, long-suffering husband I had, I would not have been able to do what I was called to do. Bob understood me, and I owe a deep, deep debt to his support. I thank God that we found each other." End of quote. It is interesting that Mom's words were written on a notepad called the Fresh Air Fund, because a summer can last a lifetime. I don't know anything about that Fresh Air Fund, but I do know that our mother was a great fan of fresh air. As a child, one of my chores was to hang the washed clothes and bed sheets on the clothesline. Mom said they needed fresh air. Mom was a seeker of fresh ideas as well as fresh air, fluttering her love with sheer fragile strength and modeling her values for a peaceful and equal world for everyone.
Let's join in number 1092, "This Is My Song," in the Brethren Songbook in your pews. I can't think of a more appropriate number for her, because she was a patriot as expressed in this song.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace that lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy
This will begin our time of sharing, and we're going to begin with family who haven't shared yet, would still like to be able to say something. Just for those of you who want to share, and you might be struggling with, well, what would I share? I think the questions that I would ask you are, in what ways was Lois a blessing in your life? Or in what ways did she make you or shape who you are, who you've been? Any ways you've seen God at work or love at work in Lois or our world, in part because of her. So I'll invite family to share first, and then we'll open it up to others present here in the room. Then we'll open it up to folks on Zoom. And you can just come up and share right here, or if it's helpful, I can bring a microphone around.
I'm Megan Johnston, Lois's granddaughter, and she was a real inspiration. Her energy was just incredible, I'd say, right up to the past year or so. 98 years of nonstop Energizer bunny. Even, I'd say maybe 5 or 10 years ago, I felt like she was more energetic than me. When I was little, we would stay at their farmhouse in North Liberty, and I'd come downstairs in the morning, all sleepy-eyed, and she would be lying on the kitchen floor with her legs up over her head in some sort of self-created yoga pose. And I think that's part of what kept her alive for all those years. That and the oatmeal every morning for probably almost all of those 99 years. I now eat oatmeal, not every morning, but often. I do yoga every morning. Her peace tradition was really inspiring to me as well. I'm not a member of the Church of the Brethren, but the pacifism and the commitment to building peaceful relationships and peaceful community absolutely stuck with me, and that's my professional field, is peaceful conflict resolution. So I feel really fortunate just to have grown up with her in my life, and of course I would not be here, literally, without her and Bob. Thank you.
I'm Lois's daughter-in-law. I met her in church when I was either 3 or 4 weeks old. I remember it well. And she happened, Eric and I were the 2 new babies in the church. He's a whole week older than I am. So for 1 week, I get to call him an old man. But, so he was 4 weeks old, I was 3 weeks old, thereabouts. Lois would probably tell you that I started chasing him at that moment. The thing is, it was pretty mutual, almost from birth. And so Lois was my mother-in-law for 57 and a half years. And we got along pretty well. So she called me one evening, must have been in October when she was in hospice, and I said, well, Lois, Eric's already in bed. She goes, I know, I called to talk to you. And she wanted to know how the family was. She said, Eric doesn't talk very much. I said, yes, I've noticed that over the years. But she kept me up till 11:30. And I finally said, Lois, I'm so sorry, but it's my bedtime. I have to be somewhere in the morning. So when you talk about her energy, I mean, she went circles around all of us.
I'm Lauren Waggy. Lois is my aunt. And there are many, many things that could be shared. Several years ago, Our Lady of the Road here in South Bend gave a musical, The Man of La Mancha, and Lois tried always to come to such things. She did come that evening and told me afterwards that at her memorial, she'd like to have the song To Dream an Impossible Dream. That is her. That is her. It was mentioned the poems that she wrote. I'd like to read a poem in her honor by Maya Angelou. It's called When Great Trees Fall. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent on their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration, our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
I guess we'll open it up now to anybody else here, or else on Zoom. Okay, we've got some folks on Zoom, and I probably don't need to. Oh, good. Okay, we'll wait on Zoom. You want to come up? No. Go ahead and come. Yeah, we'll do here, and then we'll hit Zoom.
Yeah. My name is Lynn Lambert, and I loved my uncle and aunt, Uncle Bob, Aunt Lois. And I told about Uncle Bob before he passed away, and all the times that I got to go to family gatherings and play my accordion for his birthdays, like 3 times. That would have been, I think today, if I were to play today, I might play the William Tell Overture again, just because that's the way she was. That's the way she was. When I was a child, a grade school kid, I remember being at Grandma and Grandpa Clark's farmhouse, and my dad always picked on Aunt Lois. He was the youngest. He always said, once a baby, always baby, amen to that. That was my dad. and he would pick on her and say she was the holy roller of the family. And I had gone to church all my life, and I loved Jesus too. So I didn't think that was such a terrible thing. And I remember sitting down with her like she was a good friend. And she was my aunt, but at that moment, and then for the rest of my life, we were like friends. She wasn't just my aunt, and I was her niece. It wasn't that. We were friends, and we could be holy rollers together and preach at each other. We never, ever would have a conversation without giving God the glory for what we were talking about or what he had done for us. And I was thinking, too, that marriage is not easy. You have to work at it to hold it together. And I have 52 years now with my husband, and in this world standards, we should not be together. And Aunt Lois shared with me when I was struggling that being different was okay, like that little book says. Being different is okay. And she was instrumental in me realizing that my strengths were his weaknesses, and his strengths were my weaknesses. And if we would just stick it out, that we would eventually melt together. That's exactly what happened. And so now, today, I can give her some of the credit, a lot of credit to God, but some of the credit to her for the encouragement and the support that she gave me in my marriage, too. So I'm gonna miss those conversations, but as long as I have my mind, I'm gonna remember them and pass it on to the next generation when I have opportunity. Thanks.
So I'll start with the confession. First off, I was Lois's pastor before Pastor Ken got here. I'm David. And she treated me like I was her son. And she was always so eager for me to meet her sons and her daughter. I have both of your books. I don't know if you have more than two, but I have two of your books anyway. A few weeks ago, Pastor Ken asked me to visit your mom, and my confession is I think I cried more today. I cried more today than I did at my own mom's funeral. I conducted her memorial service and kept it together throughout the whole service, and then everybody thought there was something wrong with me, so we're professionals, so we learn how to do these things, I guess, but it was nice to be able to experience this a little differently than I did my own mom's service. Your mom and I had something in common that kind of bonded us together. Neither one of us wanted to move to Indiana. And both of us were married by a Whitacre. Her dad was the Whitacre. My wife's great-grandfather was a Whitacre. They're spelled differently, but they both were brethren pastors, so we'll go with that. Lois always said, I didn't really want to leave Pennsylvania. I had a fellow there. But when they came out to Pine Creek, after the first service, they went to the basement, and in the basement, she saw Bob. She thought maybe Indiana will be okay. And pretty soon the fellow in Pennsylvania was forgotten. And the trouble was, Bob wasn't a preacher. But as my wife reminded me today, and as Lois reminded you, she couldn't have done what she did if it wasn't for your dad. He supported her every bit of the way. I loved sitting across from your dad when he would eat a duck dinner at Mandarin House, and your mom would just shake her head, and they're so cute. But I wanted to share how when we went to visit a couple weeks ago, you guys had arranged the pictures on the wall so beautifully, the way she could just look by her bedside and see her family, but especially see the picture of her and Bob, and she was ready to go be with him. And so most of my tears are just sadness for not being able to be with her anymore. And that shouldn't overcome the joy of having been able to spend as many years as we had with her. But she was a giant, and just really wonderful to have known her and to carry her in our hearts and in our minds. That's better than all the stuff we had to carry when we tried to set up an office for her over at the Martin Luther King, the Charles Martin Center over on the west side. She wanted all that stuff. We wanted to create a peace center over there, and I know she spent hours over there trying to organize it after it came to my mind today. She just, like you said, had so much energy, and I'll just never forget the time I said, Lois, when the wind blows you down and you're protesting and you can't hang on to your walker, it may be a sign you shouldn't be out there. But that wouldn't prevent her from being out there. She was out there, sun, moon, wind or rain, snowstorm, it didn't matter. She held her sign and she was out there. And I just will never forget what a precious person she is.
All right, Connie, would you go ahead and put up on Zoom who we're ready to hear share?
There we go. All right, there we go. It's so good to be here by Zoom. I wish I was there in person. I haven't seen Eric and Kay in so long, and I see some of my cousins there besides Lauren. I saw Norman and Carol and Deanna, and it's good to see some of my cousins on the Zoom too, and Aunt Joyce. Aunt Joyce, by the way, I hope you know how to raise your hand because you probably want to say something. But anyway, I'm Lois's niece. She's the oldest of 10, and I'm the oldest of her youngest sibling, Eunice. And I think that I'm so much like Aunt Lois because I think that I have a lot of treasures my kids are going to be cleaning out whenever they have to clean out my stuff. pressed leaves, rocks, all kinds of things. So I love my Aunt Lois very much, as all of you. She was always at Prince of Peace. I actually was at Prince of Peace when I was a little girl. My family was there for a short time when we lived in South Bend. And I have the blessing of having Aunt Lois's prayer covering she gave to me. And every morning I put this on to pray for all of my cousins, all my family. So it's a blessing. It's like a mantle passed to me, and I don't take it lightly. She has a pretty heavy calling, and I think mine's pretty heavy too. It's hers was definitely peace. She was the photographer, so I was surprised to see so many pictures with her on the other side of the camera. She was the one taking all the pictures. And what I loved about her most was one of the reasons we just had a reunion very close to y'all. It was at Camp Mac, and that's in Milford, Indiana. And so I wanted so much to see her then. We were so close. But the reason that I was really wanting an in-person reunion in the midst of COVID was because of Aunt Lois. What I remember about her is those walk talks with me, where she would take me aside and she would just ask me how I was doing and what I felt about different things, and ask me about life and things like that. So she made me feel like I was the only important person in the entire world. And I'm sure she made all of you feel that way. And so I'm sure she made me feel like I was her favorite niece, but I'm sure the other nieces here felt the same way, because she would just make you feel that way. And we love to have long conversations. I love to talk like her. So we had long conversations, and we always sang hymns. And it's not so easy singing over cell phones the way it was on landlines long ago, but we still enjoyed those hymns together. And we sang a little harmony here and there. And she always sang her favorites, which I love doing. And I love her life, and I love celebrating her all the time, every day. So thanks for letting me share. And I wish I was there to give y'all a hug and all that, but hopefully one day we'll get a chance to do that. If not, we'll probably see you in heaven one day. I love you, Aunt Lois. Thank you.
Okay. Is it NIMBY? Is that right? Well, you're muted.
Yes.
We got you.
Thank you. I first met Lois in about 1974 or 5. She was in the home of my late sister, Lorraine Odom. And I didn't live in South Bend at the time. I was there here to visit my sister. And Lois was, the day that I met her, expounding to my sister about why she would be this great Head Start teacher. And I remember thinking then, as I listened to Lois, she was so animated and so passionate about it. I thought, what a wonderful thing it would be to be a student in her class at any level, really, as I came to know later on. The last few years, knowing Lois has been such a marvelous thing. I last saw her about 6 weeks ago now. And one of the things I will remember about her, other than just her depth of character and the love that she had for humanity, one of the physical things that I'll remember is she had the most marvelous skin. Her skin was, you just wanted to touch her face. And knowing her as I do, I can't imagine that she had any kind of ritual for having that skin, but there it was. And then her eyes, just the light that came from within her, that shone through her eyes. I will hold that always in my memory for her. And she was like no one else I've ever known. It's such a wonderful gift to have had her as part of my life. And thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Mishler. I teach at IUSB, and I was very privileged to be asked by my colleague Monica Tesloff to participate in the oral history that we did of Lois a few years ago, which you can find on the website for the Civil Rights Heritage Center. They recently posted this week in her honor. For those of you who didn't know her whole life story, it's a wonderful story. So the thing of it is, I moved to South Bend in 2002 for this job at IU. And I came from New York City, where I had been involved in the organizing the movement against at that point, the upcoming war in Iraq. And so when I got to South Bend, I joined in with the local committee that was doing the same work. And that's where I met Lois and came to love Lois. Now, what's interesting about that is we could have come from very different planets. I'd never been in Indiana before. I was a New Yorker. I was Jewish. I was non-religious. And so if you were just looking at types, we might not have become close. But Lois had a spark in her. She was fearless. She was committed. And she would, in every situation, be looking out for who you could bring to learn something, to be engaged, to understand that peace was a job for all of us. And the fearlessness of it, I remember at one time we had a picket downtown where the Michiana Peace and Justice Coalition every Monday would meet. And at this time, we were being met across the street by some people who really disagreed with what we had to say. And they were kind of scurvy looking and tough and looked like that if it wasn't for propriety, they might do us some harm. And I saw Lois cross the street on her own, wade into this group, and start talking to them about why peace was really important. And she made them love her. She handed one of them her handbag so she could get a leaflet out of it. She asked one of them to escort her back to our picket line. And they were all happy with that. And we became close, and at every action for peace, for social justice, Lois and I would talk. And I came, a lot of us who, as we get older, complain a lot. And Lois really had only one complaint as she got older, which was that it was a lot harder to come to these activities. So I came to drive her back and forth to picket lines and demonstrations and listen to what she had to say and how she came to say it. And one of the things that was so critical for me was that she never gave up on anybody. Everybody who was willing to listen to her, she would engage, she would talk. She was kind and compassionate and understood that there might be disagreements, but never let that deter her. So I was thinking about Lois a lot this week, as I'm sure we all have been. And what keeps running through my mind is the old song from the Civil Rights Movement about having one's eye on the prize. Lois had her eye on the prize all the time, and it was something we all could learn from. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Excellent. We have you, Anna.
Hi, everyone. It's so funny that Paul just shared that story about the Monday night vigils, because I was going to share a very similar story. I've known Lois for, as far as I know, probably since I was born, or at least since I was a baby, growing up at Prince of Peace. But we really started hanging out a lot when I was about 14 or 15, when the Iraq War, when we invaded Afghanistan, and then in the run up to the Iraq War, I remember being very, very angry. You know, I started becoming close to Lois, you know, with all of the work that she was doing, and, you know, got to know her a lot better, and got to, you know, be involved with her, and going to those Monday night vigils, you know, and the Martin Luther King Day events that she would always do at the Century Center, and a whole variety of different, you know, vigils and protests and events, and various kinds of, you know, flyerings. She just kind of brought me along to anything that I wanted to participate in, and I got to help her make, you know, buttons and flyers, and she really was a mentor to me in a lot of ways. And I very much remember having those experiences, you know, Monday nights in those vigils, and seeing when those people started to come across the street or show up across the street. And, you know, sometimes they would play really loud, obnoxious music, have really, really large flags, rev their truck engines, and just generally look menacing and aggressive. And, you know, my natural tendency is, you know, toward anger and, you know, vitriol and self-righteous fury when, you know, when I encounter things like that. And she would always remind me of the importance of compassion and empathy for the people that are on the other side, and that, you know, we do what we do out of love, and a desire for the good for the world, and point out to me, you know, the various kinds of things that might have happened in those people's lives. And I found out through her, and because of her going to talk to those people, that one of the most loud and obnoxious people on the other side had actually been a prisoner of war. And that a lot of that anger that he was coming with was coming from pain and trauma, and to have compassion for that. And so, you know, she remains for me an example of the kind of person that I want to be, and the kinds of lessons that I want to learn and bring into what I do. And, you know, I'm not sure if I still have ever learned those lessons quite as well as I'd like to, but she very much remains for me a compass point of the kind of person that I want to be. So, thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Lee, we're ready for you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. I met Lois when I moved back to South Bend in early '73. It's kind of funny, like I knew when I met Ray and Glenda Ray Hernandez, but I don't remember when I met Lois. It's like I almost always knew her. I remember she gave one of the first talks against apartheid, which was like 10 years before people were getting arrested all the time, you know, sitting in at the South Africa embassy and everything. And as other people have mentioned, I went to for a while, I went to the federal building, the federal courthouse demonstrations, and Martin Luther King, we marched on that until the pandemic. And I saw in the picture show people we worked with that are gone now, like Galen and Pam. But I wanted just to tell a little story. It'll give you a pretty good idea of what happened. This was after the Iraq War had started, and Lois was in her 80s when this happened. She and I were out campaigning. I don't even remember for who, but we were out at LaSalle Park, and Lois was a member of the Board of Public Housing. So she wanted to go out there, and we both went out there. And absolutely nobody bothered us. Everybody was coming out and telling us about this young man that had been tased several times by the police the weekend before. So two security cops came and forced us to leave, and she gave them an argument, and it wasn't until they said they'd call the police that we decided to leave. All right. And she had every right to be out there. She was on the Board of Public Housing, but this is just a story that just kind of illustrates what my relationship with her and how I saw her. And I just wanted to share that with people. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And we're ready for Conrad.
It was interesting. A couple months ago, I was thinking of the scripture I would use at my funeral, planning my own funeral. And it was the same two scriptures that were used today for Lois's funeral. And for me, the Micah passage is a challenge. But today, for Lois, she fulfilled that. She lived that. She exampled that for all of us. And it's one of the reasons that we all love her so much. She and I shared a birthday. I was born on her 22nd birthday. And when we discovered that, that was a special bond that we had, the two of us. And we were at a demonstration on our birthday in front of the Morris, and someone said, let's celebrate the 90th birthday of Lois Clark. And she told everyone around us that it was my birthday as well. And I think on her 95th birthday, I went out to celebrate in the shared living place where she was living. And they were having a birthday party for her. And she wanted to make sure that everyone knew it was my birthday as well.
Nice.
It seems to me that epitomizes Lois.
Yeah.
She always wanted to share, to make someone else feel special, to make sure that everyone was her special person. And so all the things that Lois and I shared from the time I moved here in 1969 and first met her when she was volunteering at Broadway Christian Parish, to spending time at Pine Creek and at doing all kinds of things with her. I taught in Head Start, and we worked in Head Start together. We demonstrated together. And all that time, she modeled for me and for all of us what it means to be committed to living the life that you were called to live. And so I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, and we'll go to Jerry, but in just a second, I want to read, Judy Bradford has posted in the chat, but folks here in the church won't be able to read. She says, oh, it just scrolled. Can you scroll back? She says, I met Lois through the League of Women Voters in the South Bend area. When we were celebrating our 100th anniversary in 2020, we researched our local history. Lois is part of our written record. We first found her name in the minutes of the LWSVSBA board meeting in 1981. She was reaching out to the League in her role with Head Start in Walkerton and wanted the League to partner with her on a project. But my most vivid memory of her is from just a few years ago, when about 20 of us gathered around the MLK Reverend Hesburgh statue downtown. My word, it was cold, but there was Lois with her walker. What a trooper, what an inspiration. Thank you. All right, now we've got Jerry.
Well, good afternoon. And I love what people have had to say and share, both folks who are from the religious community and the family, but also those of us from the movement for social justice. And I want to say that Lois always acted to me as if she had a special connection with me. And it may be because she loved my husband, my compañero Paul Mishler, but I think she gave that look to many people. And I've been in this business of social justice with Paul Mishler since we were in high school. It's like 54 years. And so it's special to go to a rally or a demonstration and to be made to feel special by someone. And one of her family members mentioned her sparkling eyes. She also had beautiful jewelry. And if you've been doing this as long as many of us have been, it's wonderful to feel like, oh, you're special and something good is happening. That's why I put in the song, the words to the song of Phil Oak's song, When I'm Gone. And I know Rhonda and I could sing it for you another time. I want to speak about also the graciousness. That is Michiana Peace and Justice Coalition that I got to know when I would come out here to visit Paul from New York City. And I moved here 10 years ago. They have a very specific purpose. And now it's every Monday, rain or shine or snow, in front of the federal building, speaking truth to power to try and stop the military spending so we can serve our people's needs and stop intervening in an imperialist wars all over the world. And yet there's a graciousness that's like Lois had for everybody, in that when we needed to do something here in South Bend around anti-Asian racist violence, because Trump was calling COVID the China flu and people were beating up and hurting Asian people, they graciously let us use that space. And also for a serious, very important demonstration around Gaza when the Israelis viciously went into Palestine. Again, they welcomed us and they gave that space. And I think for me, this is what it's all about. Like, and for those of you who are religious and maybe not radical, Marxist, whatever, I want you to know I got radicalized by my church, and you never know how it's going to happen. I started out being for the war in Vietnam, and my minister and youth minister talked with me and encouraged me to think more critically. And you don't know, when you sow the seeds of freedom and justice, you don't know where it's going to take root. And so I guess I want to end with a beautiful line from Pablo Neruda, the Chilean Nobel laureate poet. And it goes like this: Quise ser como el pan, la lucha no me encontró ausente. I wanted to be like bread, that the struggle never found me absent. And at the end of any time we recognize people, we always say in Latin America, Lois Treasure, presente. She's always going to be presente with us. Thanks a lot.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. All right, we have Elizabeth and then Andy. Did you say? Oh, no. Okay. Elizabeth, I think it might be our last word. Bring it home to us.
Well, I loved Paul's story about Lois crossing to the other side of the street and getting the counter protesters to love her. It really does show her fearlessness as a leader and her unwavering advocacy for peace. That, combined with her kindness and compassion, I think is what made her so extraordinary. And also her work as a builder of bridges, a model of what it means to really think about love, not as something you feel, but as something you do. And for me, Lois just embodied and enacted love throughout her life. As others have said, she lived her faith and modeled what it means to practice unselfish and other regarding love. And her lifelong fight for peace, but also for justice, equality, inclusion, and human dignity really were inspiring to me and obviously to so many others. As people have already noted today, she did all this with a smile, which for many of us can be difficult at times. This notion of love your enemy is something that we struggle with. But for Lois, as many of the stories you heard today showed, she recognized that that enemy has a story too, and reasons for their own actions. And the fact that she was able to cross so many divides and work with so many people from different backgrounds is really amazing and also inspirational to me, and something I think that we'll all carry with us as we continue to do the work that we do. In talking with Lois, it's clear that she really did take to heart this idea of being Christ's hands and feet on earth, but she also actively promoted interfaith dialogue and collaborations, as Jerry noted, with people not just from all faiths, but also secular humanists and people who are non-religious. And Lois did make people feel special, valued, appreciated, As her niece said earlier, and Jerry reiterated, she made you feel like she thought the world of you. And I think that's because she did. She really did love her fellow human beings, despite our many, many imperfections. And she showed up for important events in our life. Seeing Lois show up at the county city building with her walker at a time when her health was a challenge, to support me at an event where some of my work was being recognized, was just amazing to me. I was so humbled because of all of the things that she had done and accomplished in her life, and the fact that she would take time to come, and not just that, but of course, bring her wonderful smile with her, and her just the way that she radiated pride and appreciation for everything that not just I did, but that each of us were doing in our lives. And it wasn't an act, right? It wasn't to put on. She truly valued people around her in a way that is incredibly rare and a wonderful example for us. We often hear that expression that people won't remember that much of what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I think that's what I think of when I think of Lois. She certainly made me, and obviously so many others, feel valued, feel heard, and feel hopeful. Seeing her at Equal Pay Day rallies, marches for science, the city council chambers, the league meetings, it was always a joy, because she was always a delight to talk with, and she was always excited about something that she was working on. I don't think I ever saw her at any meeting without some kind of a petition in her hand that she was wanted to ask me to sign. So always working for that cause and to make a positive difference in others' lives. Like Anna said, she's a role model for how we want to live our lives, and certainly a role model for me as I think about what I want my life to look like and who I want to be. She showed up. She never gave up protesting, as we heard before, also writing and calling, and her presence and her graciousness, her compassion, her kindness, her smile will always remind me to keep on fighting. And, you know, I think if she could fight well into her 90s, there's no excuse for the rest of us. And so I'm just incredibly grateful and feel very blessed to have known Lois and to continue to have her example in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you, everybody who's shared. And we thank you for helping to make this a fitting celebration. So we'll invite you to rise in body or in spirit, and let's sing together the song that's printed in the insert of your bulletin. And folks who are online, if you know We'll Build a Land, or want to look up the words on Google, then you can sing along with us.
We'll give them gardens instead.
once faint and once weak, where the arms of righteousness stand, my people are well beloved, and my people we see. Home be the land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then breathe in peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, in peace our ever flow in stream.
Friends, in the face of all our realities, we are the people who heal each other, who grow strong together, who name the truth, who know what it means to live in community, moving toward a common dream for a new heaven and a new earth, in the power and the love of God, the company of our beloved and each other, and the leading of the Holy Spirit. Let us go in peace.